Everyone and their grandma knows that if you want to achieve something, you have to set a goal. And then you need to focus on that goal, and then you need to take action towards that goal. But in business today, this is an oversimplification, because the bottleneck is both around the execution as well as around just the quality of thinking that goes into accomplishing any goal. You can have a goal to reach 30K MRR or $3 billion annual recurring revenue, whatever it might be. If the input in terms of thinking is not where it needs to be in terms of helping you to take action tactically and strategically so that you can de-risk the time that you're going to be putting into achieving this goal, and you're actually going to get there with less guesswork, with less sleepless nights. In today's video, I think you're going to get a lot of value from the simple framework that I'm going to give you to help you achieve any business goal that you have. And this framework is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is the goal is not the goal. I'll explain what I mean by that as we go forward. The second part is the ultimate question, the one simple question that you need to be asking yourself at the start of this process in order to then, part 3, obtain the answer and move forward and execute. But what does execution actually look like? And in an unexpected way, what does it feel like? I think execution in a way can sort of be a little bit like a meditation, but we'll get to that. And it's not, I know that might sound a little woo-woo, but it's not going in that direction, I promise you. So by the way, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Ackerson. I'm the founder of Growbo.com. In 2021, we hit 1.2 million in revenue and went on to become a multi-million-dollar company from that point. This daily video series keeps me accountable and on the path to my new goal of the company achieving $1 million in profit per month. And this gives you, through these videos and through the content related to these videos, a real world playbook as we build. So I hope you find it educational, valuable, and perhaps a little entertaining. So starting with the first part, the goal is not the goal. Goals are a target simply to aim at. They are not the destination. In fact, if you have a goal, for example, to lose weight, you are essentially failing until you hit that goal. It's not like you can just work out for a day and then, oh, look, I got my weight goal, unless your goal is to drop like, I don't know, 3 pounds or something like this. And the psychology of the idea of a goal is, it's very uncomfortable. You're not going to accomplish it within a day, and that lack of a dopamine hit from a psychological and biopsychological perspective, it's going to feel just like you're failing, because essentially you are. Your mind has the goal of, I want to make, $1 billion next year. That's not achievable within a short amount of time. So you need to work in line with your biopsychological operating system that is either going to, that's going to be motivated and encouraged as you make incremental progress towards doing that. For that reason, you want to make doing the work that you have to do day to day the goal, okay? You're gonna feel unfulfilled otherwise. You're not gonna get that biopsychological dopamine hit reward otherwise. But if you take this approach of making, and I'll talk to you in a second about how we actually do this, but if you are able to make doing the work the goal, you will feel fulfilled. You will feel rewarded every minute of every day. And your energy as a result of this is going to feel limitless. You'll outwork all of your competitors, and you're actually going to see compounding results faster than you otherwise would have expected. It's almost like having that mountaintop goal that you have, $1 billion in revenue, or 10K MRR if you're earlier on in your entrepreneurial journey, just getting to 10K in revenue per month. I remember when that was a really big deal to me. Just making the first $10,000 period at first was a big deal to me. But if you focus on the incremental progress and make the action steps themselves be the goal in a way, and actually the, enjoying the journey becomes the destination, it's going to feel more rewarding and fulfilling at an intrinsic level. Because otherwise it's all extrinsic. It's always the top of the mountain. And even when you get to the top of the mountain, there's gonna be another mountain to climb. You're gonna feel happy for like 2 seconds. Oh yay. I remember the day that I looked at my phone and I saw with great pride that the company had hit $1 million for the entire year for the first time. And I've been working toward this goal for the company as an entrepreneur, the company Grobo that I founded, for years. And I remember it was just like, it was so lofty, it was so big. And then I reached it and I felt such a great sense of pride. No doubt about it. It was amazing. I said, wow, like I really, I bootstrapped the company from $200 to this point. This is a great feeling. This is a great day. And it was. But fundamentally, I was still me. I was still the same person. And that feeling of, I accomplished the goal and getting that big dopamine hit, it lasted for, I don't know, maybe a day or two, and then it was kind of back to normal. It also wasn't so surprising, and it wasn't like this big revelation. This is what people expect. If only I could achieve blah, 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 in terms of my business, then I'll really have made it. But it's never permanent. It's never permanent, okay? The only thing that's permanent is the choice of when we get up during the day, what are we going to spend our time on? What are we choosing to put our energy and time and mind towards? And are we enjoying that or are we hating that? Okay, so the real immediate goal when you're planning at first and being strategic, like we're trying to be with part of this framework, is trying to figure out how to, and trying to figure out like how to win. Well, winning is the system that gets you to your target. In other words, your goal. The real goal, therefore, is the system itself. Okay, the system is, if you're, for example, looking to, I want to get jacked, or I just want to get more physically fit. I want my, aerobic endurance to be better. I want to be able to run a mile in 10 minutes or less. So your system, therefore, should become the goal, not the goal being the goal. Okay, the system and where you should get your reward from is, okay, did I go to the gym today? The system is go to the gym, and even if you don't work out, even if you don't run on the treadmill, or you don't run to the gym or go outside and take a lap, whatever, the system could be just lacing up your shoes, okay? Or just going to the gym and at a minimum, standing there for 5 minutes, because that's easy. That is easy to accomplish. And what will most likely flow from that, because you're keeping your ultimate goal, in the forefront of your mind without it, just constantly measuring against it so aggressively. What's naturally going to happen is you're probably not just going to spend 5 minutes just standing there. You're going to get on, the equipment at a minimum. You're going to get on the treadmill. You're going to go outside and take a lap. You're going to do something, and then it's going to get easier. All right, it's like a ball rolling downhill. Okay. So the hardest part is just understanding that the goal is not the goal, the system is the goal, and making that system as easy as possible to just, get going. So for me, for example, as part of what I know the inputs that are needed to accomplish our goal of getting to $1 million in profit per month as a company, my hypothesis is that the system I need to adopt is every day when I wake up, I'm going to write at least 330 words. It usually turns out to be, well over that. And I'm gonna sit down, do the research, do the writing. Today I was writing, the scripts and my notes essentially for this video, and then hitting record. And then that's my system. Actually, as I'm talking about it too, I could probably just make it easier. Like just make it be like write 330 words. Just go from there. Okay. The video can be like a separate goal. Like if your task is too big, you're not going to get the reward of the dopamine hit. 330 words, I can accomplish that in as little as 15 to 20 minutes. I'll probably go for longer, generally because I want to be delivering something that is of quality to you guys. I want to bring the energy to on the video. So it needs to be a topic that I can speak with authority from experience from. So the system though is the goal, okay? And that's what helps you to get those wins, to get those dopamine hits. And it's as simple as lacing up your shoes, the daily visit to the gym, or just sitting down in my case and writing 230 words, which can be done in as little as 15 to 20 minutes. So quick story, I had a childhood friend in my 20s who tried to start a business at the same time as me. And his total addressable market, or TAM, for his business was much bigger than mine because Grobo is B2B and his company was B2C, business to consumer. So obviously, much bigger market. And his business was essentially, it was like a personal training brand, and he would do nutrition plans and fitness plans and even, one-on-one coaching. But I later learned, envied and resented how my business venture was always doing better than his. And this was because while on the surface, he was putting in the reps, and ironically, he was a personal trainer. He was talking about reps. So on the surface, he was putting in reps, but the quality of those marketing and or business reps or exercises was crap. He would kind of rush through doing the work, put together some content for the blog, and at one point too, he was driving a fair amount of traffic, but it was kind of like just like a shortcut that he was using to game the system, to game Google's SEO, and it wasn't sustainable. And again, the traffic was just kind of nonsense traffic. So he had the vanity metric of like, I don't know, over 100,000 visits at one point to the site, but he wasn't putting in the time or focus needed to build the skill, to build the mental muscle, I guess you could say, but the skill to create content that his audience would actually care about and that they would want to share and that they'd be searching for organically and not using any cheap tactics, tricks, or shortcuts. So he would do these low quality mental effort reps, and then he would go take the rest of the day off, play video games, and get high. Thus, he got some traffic, as I said, but he never made much money from it. And especially from his website, he would get all of his clients just locally, pretty much through word of mouth referrals. And eventually he grew bitter and resentful, and he gave up on the business altogether. On my end though, I would often put in, by contrast, 20 to 30 hours into a single blog article. And although I wasn't perfect and the content was never perfect, the results really started to compound. We started to build a reputation. We started to see traffic going up over time, to the point where on a train ride from Long Island into Manhattan, where I would sometimes go for different networking events, on a random train ride from Long Island to New York, people would recognize me. Strangers would recognize me through the notoriety and the awareness that was building through the blog. More importantly than that, we were bringing in 30 to 50 email opt-ins daily at the peak of our traffic at that time. Today, our traffic is definitely very different, in part because the game has changed, and I have taken too long to react to, the change in Google's algorithm, where it's now an AI overview at the top of search. So now part of changing and adapting is me actually, making these videos and putting out content again, and really getting focused on the problem that I know the business needs to solve. All right, and that's what you should be thinking about too, in terms of thinking about what is the goal, and then the system to get you to the goal is like, what does your company need? Okay, not necessarily what do you feel like you want to do, but what does the company need? And that's going to help you define what is the goal, what is the system, and what are the inputs that are going to get you to said goal. The problem though was that we saw success, and we got to the point, and I was so proud of this accomplishment, where I never needed to go to networking events after the first 2 years of starting the business, because we had all this organic traffic, and we had just all these organic inbound client leads. The problem was that once that was achieved, and once we achieved a certain level of success in later months and years, I depended too much on team members to help write content in our articles, and I didn't care and put enough time and care and love into the content because I said, we have the traffic, but the traffic plateaued and eventually started to go down. So why did this happen? It's the same reason that, and you can probably relate to this. Writing is hard. Work itself is hard because critical thinking and analysis and sitting quietly in a room, staring at a computer, it's all mentally hard work. Relatively speaking, compared to our many of our family members, mothers, fathers, grandparents, it's relatively easy work by comparison. So it's not that hard. It's really just today, it's hard, relatively speaking, especially in the technological, social media, smartphone environment that we're in, where our brains and bodies are programmed to, just have so much FOMO and be so easily distractible. So it is hard, no doubt about it. I don't want to minimize that, because if it was easy, everyone would do it, just to get into the discipline, the consistency, the focus, and doing it in a sustainable way so that you don't burn out. We'll talk more about in a second. The momentum stopped because the daily work wasn't the goal. Growth instead, something external, was the goal. And so it was always external, instead of just saying like, well, what does the business need in order to see constant growth? It needed more time, care, and attention in terms of just the little details because I noticed once I would come in and out sometimes working with my team who had trained on, how to write the content. And for a time it was good. But when I would stop doing those group calls where I would say, okay, team, let's record the call, and then, you're going to synthesize what we talk about into the article, or me going into the articles and making small little tweaks and edits so that, the voice was, what we really wanted to project in terms of the brand, in terms of the writing of the article. When those things stopped, the growth, once again, would plateau and stop. When those things would start, growth would go up. So maybe this sounds cliche, but you need to find work that you love to do, or at least if the work that that you maybe not need to do, but that the business, in order to survive and thrive, needs you to do, at least figure out how to reframe your work so that you do love it. And you don't have to do it forever. You do have to do it for just now, because it's what does the company need, right? You can ultimately hand it off to someone and slowly back your way out of it. But again, I think I also did it too fast, in terms of backing my way out of some of those processes. And that's why we plateaued ultimately, because the business needed me to get that system going and maybe make the handoff so that I could focus on other maybe higher level priorities like marketing campaigns and landing pages and whatnot, as might be the case with you. But again, the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. I like to think of the phrase, did you do your dids today? DIDS, devil in the details. Because it's those little actions, those little copywriting tweaks, those little typo fixes, those, in my experience, make more of the difference than just about anything. It's not just about putting up a landing page anymore. It's not just about putting out an article or a content, especially when it's so easy to regurgitate something called AI slop today with these different AI business models. It's really about those small little subtle details, those small hooks where it can lead to an aha moment for example, an audience member who then is going to share the content, and that content is going to go to someone who ultimately ends up becoming a customer or a client, and then it spreads from there, right? You don't really know, and it's hard sometimes to see, but it's those things that you can't see, but that you know and you feel, and that you're just resistant to doing, that will make all the difference, okay? Because if you can reframe whether you are able to make it work that you love, or at least reframe it for now to be work that you love, so that you feel grateful for the opportunity just to be doing it. If you can do that, therein lies a bottomless well of fulfillment and energy to outwork your competitors. The next part is the ultimate question, okay? This is the question that you need to be asking yourself at the start of this process and then repeatedly throughout. The question is, and I heard this from another entrepreneur, what actions would you need to take such that it would be unreasonable for you to not achieve your goal, okay? Once again, because this is a simple, seemingly simple, but profound question that you need to be asking in order to achieve your goal, and thus, in order to achieve the goal, actually create the system that's going to get you there. The goal being a destination like the top of a mountain, and the bicycle, moving your feet on the pedals being like an analogy or metaphor for the system that you're going to go over and over and over again in order to move, close the distance, and get up to the top of the mountain ultimately. Once again, what actions would you need to take such that it would be unreasonable for you to not achieve your goal? This is a powerful question for those times when you feel like you've woken up, quote unquote, as I like to say, in the forest, okay? You just don't know where you should start walking yet, but you know that you want to get back to civilization. Somehow, again, just, it's a Kafka-esque, but you woke up in the forest. It doesn't matter how you got there at this moment. You just know you need to get back to civilization in order to survive and thrive. And that's your goal, to get back to civilization. You're in the forest though, and you don't know where to go. And as Jocko Willink said when he proposed this metaphor in one of his podcasts, just start walking. That is what you need to just start walking in some direction. And eventually you'll come upon perhaps a stream, and that stream will take you to a river, and that river will take you to a bridge, and that bridge will lead you to a path, and that path leads out to a road eventually, and that road leads on to your goal of getting back into town, back to civilization, just where you can survive and thrive. So when you answer this question, again, the question being, what actions would you need to take such that it would be unreasonable for you to not achieve your goal? When you answer this question from a position of not just what work can you do, but what is the work that you've secretly been avoiding? And again, think about it not just like your preferences, but what does the company need you to do? What has worked in the past? Even if it feels unscalable, what has worked in the past? What does the company need you to do right now to get it to that next level, to help you move towards your goal, whatever your goal might be? Because it's hard, it's often uncomfortable, and there's a fear of the unknown. That's why, oftentimes we are avoiding this work. So when you're making a list, trying to answer this question, include that in the list. Because basically everything that I included in my list to move us towards this goal of $1 million in profit per month, almost everything have been things that I, to one degree or another, I've been neglecting, taking ownership of, and really getting in there and just, wanting to rake over with hands in the dirt, details, getting the mud and the dirt under the fingernails, such that it's what the business needs. And it's what works and what has always worked in the past. In our case, just quality content above all. And it's what the business needs right now. It doesn't mean that I have to do that forever. Part of me looks forward to the day of, just maybe relying only on ads, for example, and maybe cold email outreach. But for now, this is where the business is at, and this is what the business needs. So that's what I'm going to consider doing, and what ultimately I am already doing. So you want to make a list of all the ideas and then pick the ones that are going to be the highest leverage and the most valuable. But again, be very aware of your own bias to not want to do work that is hard, okay, that is uncomfortable. As Keith McGovern told me, and Keith is a highly successful entrepreneur. He was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Cornell University some years ago. He was an alumnus, and I got the opportunity to meet with him and talk with him over a number of different sessions when he would come back to campus and talk. And we stayed in touch through email as well. He's also an investor. So when I knew him and he kind of mentored me a little bit back in college, he told me the one guaranteed way to become reliably successful in business is to simply be willing to do what other people are not. And how to identify that? It's to simply recognize what is hard for you is also hard and difficult and challenging for others. And if you can do that for even just some sustained period of time, doesn't mean you have to do it forever. You can if you want. You can if you truly love it, all right? And if it is sustainable, and if it's not honestly going to burn you out. And I don't know, to what extent do we exaggerate the risk of burning out in the first place? It's a valid question maybe for another day. But you'll be successful in business simply by willing to do what other people are not. Because if it's hard for you, it's hard for everyone else. And the success funnel, it gets more narrow as you go down it. There's less and less people willing to do what is hard. So you have fewer and fewer competitors. And thus it's easier and easier to stand out. Now we come to the third and final section, which is the answer. All right, we've gone over the goal is not the goal. We've gone over what is the ultimate question that you should be asking. And the third part is the answer. Okay, so the goal is not the goal. The goal is actually the system and making work be the goal itself, to the point that we love it. All right, you're just intrinsically enjoying doing the work, because a goal is always future oriented. It is never actually here until it is, and then it's a flash in the pan. The emotion involved with that, it's a big dopamine hit, but it lasts maybe a few hours or at most a few days, and it's gone. And then you need another goal. So when the goal is actually the work and you love the work, you're going to have limitless energy. You're just going to make so much faster progress, because it's just like you're just on a journey. All right, and you're just engrossed in the work, and you're just feeling a sense of pride and intrinsically motivated to move forward and actually get up and work every day. So what is your daily system going to be? And for me, an anecdote on how to organize and structure your day is you want to structure your day from high leverage tasks to low leverage tasks. Like, for example, low leverage tasks might be, just sort of like a maintenance task. Like, my lowest leverage task is today I'm gonna get on Amazon at some point and buy some of these, you know, I'm a little particular about like the pens that I like to write with. Let me see if I have one over here. Nope, that's not it. But yeah, the ink just kind of like flows onto the page. So I'm gonna get these like lovely pens that just, it's effortless. I don't have to push so hard on the paper. But I digress. That's an example of a low leverage task that I need to do. I suppose I could delegate it if I want, but it's so quick, might as well just do it. Because the pens are gonna help me with work and writing my journal and reflecting in general, but that's a low leverage task. A high leverage task is, for example, making content, or if you're a web developer, you know, building a product that's going to service your customer. It's coding for a set period of time, you know, towards a mini milestone goal of like adding a new feature, for example. So what is your daily system going to be? The answer might be different for you than it is for me, but show up and do those high leverage tasks first, always immediately after waking up. And again, I already mentioned like my inputs towards the big mountaintop goal of $1 million profit per month is waking up and writing 330 quality words per day, and then hitting record on the video. Although the video, you know, I might kind of make its own separate kind of task that is linked but comes after, so I can kind of check off the first 330 words, get that dopamine hit, you know, in terms of the biopsychological mechanism, and then move on to the video. So just be aware too, like your reward centers, they're not rational, and you want to try to like watch yourself and, you know, watch what it is that you're feeling or you're feeling energized by. And even if a task feels draining, like I will structure it so that maybe I'll have like a task if I'm not enthusiastic about it, if I feel like it's something that I just don't enjoy, I need willpower to get my way through, I'll put a task after that's maybe easier or that I'm more excited about, or both. And then after I do this activity, I have fiction, where I'm writing fiction for about 15 minutes out of the day because I'm working on some science fiction, and that's a separate goal and a separate system. So part of the answer too, though, other than synthesizing what we had before, what is the system? What are the inputs that are going to get you there such that it would be unreasonable that you don't perhaps maybe have a big goal, but also like a smaller kind of subset goal? So what are the inputs that are going to get you towards accomplishing that subset goal? So I think you also want to organize it in terms of like hierarchical goals. In other words, like have like the big, hairy, audacious goal, which is like, we're going to get to the top of the mountain. But you want to have like little flags along the way that kind of mark your journey and mark, you know, a time for celebration where you can get like an additional dopamine boost, and you can kind of measure your progress toward that bigger goal. The peace of mind that you get from doing this and saying, well, assuming that I actually do the work, that I hammer on it and I actually do the work. If I do the work, is it unreasonable? In other words, like highly unlikely that I will not achieve this goal, whether it's something as simple as like 15 appointments booked. If I do these activities, I'm going to increase the number of impressions at the top of the funnel. I'm probably going to increase it by 3 to 4x. Okay. And how does that filter down to actually getting appointments booked? Not even sales, let's say at first. But because sales, I know, okay, let's say that you want to increase sales, you want 5 new client accounts. Okay, well, to do that with an average close rate, 33%, you need 15 appointments booked. And if you triple or quadruple the number of impressions at the top of your funnel, what's the likelihood that you're at least going to move the needle from maybe 5 appointments booked to 10 to 15? Pretty good, right? But you can move the dial higher if you feel that it's only reasonable. Well, it's reasonable that we would get 15, but it's not unreasonable. So how high do you turn up the dial? Well, maybe you have to do another 50% in terms of inputs, in terms of like activities to your daily system, and then you will get the result in terms of it being unreasonable. So the other part of the answer here to conclude is focus, okay? Every time that my business has grown like gangbusters, and I love that word, gangbusters means, you know, it's just like a lot. It requires focus, okay? So if you want to start seeing that compounding result, if you want to start seeing that progress towards your ultimate goal, you need to say no to everything else that is not part of that system, especially when you're focused in that moment, when you're focused throughout your day, when you're focused and reflecting and tweaking and not taking on more appointments or tasks that you do not absolutely need to be doing. Because it takes a little bit of time for the flywheel to kick in, and it starts to kick in the case of marketing, for example, when you continuously send a campaign, when you hit send, when you send the email, when you push code to the dev server, and then ultimately onto the live server. Okay, it happens when you ship. You start to see that compounding effect. But you need to stay focused and not be like notification, 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 here, there, everywhere. As Steve Jobs said about focus, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that are out there that have been proposed. You have to pick carefully though. I'm actually as proud of the things we haven't done as the things that I have done. Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. Another way that he put it is focus is about saying no. So whether you're focused in the moment or you're focused, just even day to day, week to week, it's about saying no to new responsibilities that don't align with answering that question and getting you to your goal and making sure the system and the flywheel starts to spin. Finally, I call this final subsection within the answer the slowdown. Okay? Stop running so fast on the inside. Okay? To do great work, you need to slow down and think. Your mind needs to be clear and ideally rested. Cardio exercise can help with this. Meditation also helps with it. But you need to slow down in order to take higher quality action. And this is very challenging if you are, especially in American culture, or if you're just like kind of sucked into a lot of the online digital culture that talks about, like on YouTube, it's so much about like make money. And that's so important, I think, for like growing a sustainable business. You have to be profitable. And if you're not growing, you are to some extent stagnating because of inflation, because of market dynamics. The market is always changing. And we do live in a fast-paced world. We live in a world of AI and there's a lot of hype around AI as well. But you gotta slow down in order to take higher quality action. And it's challenging in our daily lives with social media and smartphones and other forms of near constant alerts and communications begging for our attention, to the point where you just feel FOMO all the time. Fear of missing out, FOMO. It's programmed into our bodies for many of us. So get off of social media, minimize it as much as you can if you can't just absolutely get off of it. I know that I can't fully get off of it because I do need it, for work, but you can control the amount of time that you spend on it and whether or not you get sucked into watching yet another YouTube video or scrolling endlessly on X or Instagram or whatever your drug of choice is, because that's what they are. They are drugs. They're really not productive. They're not. I think it's worse than just watching TV or a show or something. But stop. Try to stop. Take a breath. I watched this recording when I went to this Buddhist meditation group, and the Buddhist monk in the video was talking about this idea of the subtle body. It's the concept that within our bodies in Buddhism, to explain it, it's kind of like, imagine that there's like a bird inside of your chest. And the bird, according to this monk, he was comparing Americans and American culture to what it was like to, just everyday people in, for example, Southeast Asia, who are more divorced from suburban or city living and not in this constant kind of like hustle culture and so surrounded by technology and all these social media and alerts and feeling of FOMO. The subtle body is kind of like a bird that's flapping its wings. And for Americans, he was saying it's like this. It's like a hummingbird. It's going just so quickly, so fast. But for Buddhists and for just everyday people in Southeast Asia, where they're more, obviously, level of, I guess, city and town development and whatever, income is a factor here, but it's more like a slow flapping of the wings. They're more, in part because they're more divorced from technology and this hustle culture and FOMO type of mindset that gets programmed into the body. And so what does that lead to? What is, it feels like anxiety. It feels like just a constant need to move, to do something. Can't just sit, can't just think. The answer is out there. The answer is in just like some other new idea, some other next little source of stimulation. It's not in actually just doing the thing that is imperfect, because that's the reality of being human. That's the reality of building a business. It is constant small failures on the way to success. A successful business can fail to sell to 99 out of 100 people. And that's literally what happens on most websites. If you have a 1% conversion rate, you're considered, generally speaking, depending on what you're selling, profit margins, of course, but all those questions aside, if you sell to 1%, or only 1 out of 100 people, you can have a very successful business. So think about that. Think about this concept of the subtle body and how, especially if you're an American like me and you feel that way, it's a distraction oftentimes from focusing and doing the work that you need to be doing in order to climb the mountain to get to your highest possible goal. It's what makes you feel sometimes, or can make a lot of people feel, a constant feeling of fight or flight response, just really engaging the adrenal glands. So stop, all right, and lay one brick at a time as you move forward to execute, because you have to execute coming out of this video. What did you spend your time for if you're not actually going to take action? Are you going to click on to the next video? I know that YouTube's algorithm is going to recommend something delicious and spicy for the next video, but why not just close the tab after this one? Maybe subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share it with like 1 billion people. That'd be cool. But other than that, we're spending a lot of time here. You need to get something out of this and not just feel like you're being productive by watching this. All right, so I want you to take action from this video. We went through, to recap, the goal is not the goal. We went over the ultimate question you need to be asking: what actions would you need to take such that it would be unreasonable for you to not achieve your goal? And then the answer, which is execute on the system. Take action on those inputs and focus, saying no, slowing down, and laying a brick, one, in order to build that metaphorical wall, which again, let's say that's your goal. Lay one brick perfectly at a time. And this anecdote, is inspired by a guy who a few years ago, was in the news because he was a great actor, but he sort of put a lot of it in the trash, at least in a lot of people's eyes, because he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. I don't know, it still is kind of weird to me that it seems like maybe that was planned. But regardless, before all that happened, and he got sort of more of a weird reputation going on, he was a very respected actor, and he was a hardworking actor. And he talked in a 60 Minutes interview, I think it was in the mid 2000s, maybe early 2010s. Will Smith was interviewed by Scott Pelley for CBS's 60 Minutes, and he told this story of his father needing to, he wanted to build a store. And so he taught his 2 sons, one of which was Will Smith, that you take the brick and the mortar, okay, and you lay the brick perfectly one at a time. And one brick by itself may not seem like much, but if you do that over and over and over again, one day you're going to show up and you're going to have this big, beautiful wall and this big, beautiful store, which perhaps is a metaphor for your business existing independent of you and you having achieved your goal, whatever your specific goal at this time might be. And then you rinse and repeat. But the work should be the goal, not the goal itself. I hope this video has been useful and insightful for you. It's a little bit longer form than I normally do. So if you like this format, I would love to hear from you. Yeah, please like and comment below. If you are a business owner, I encourage you to check out Grobo, which can help you to delegate a lot of the work, part of the work that you are good at and that you just want to do more of it, or if you want to just get it off your plate so that you can grow faster. For a lot of business owners, it's like you don't need to necessarily know how to set up a landing page. You might need to really know, is this speaking to my target market? Because ultimately you're going to know your customers and your clients, far better than any third party. But check out grobo.com. We provide an all-in-one, on-demand marketing fulfillment team at a fraction of the cost of hiring a freelancer or freelancers, I should say, or bringing people in-house or dealing with, people and management headaches. You just delegate unlimited marketing tasks, whatever you need to get done, we get it done for you. It's transparent. You log in, you can send voice notes, video notes, type it, and you can see the progress bars moving from 0 to 100% as we get the work done for you. It provides such immense value. I created this on my own problem a few years back. Actually, in 2020 was when we initially launched it. And we've grown really quickly because it is so valuable. We want to bring it and the value it has to offer to business owners like you and keep growing from there. and help you scale up your company. We also have a white label capability, by the way. So anyway, check it out at grobo.com. And we have a 14-day, 100% satisfaction guarantee. So what do you have to lose? Check it out. Book a call with us at grobo.com. And I will see you in the next video. Keep groboing and stay focused.